unconventional lecture that you've all been sitting through and participate in a conversation about the empirical value of e-readers in the classroom. Leading the conversation are four first-year MLIS students, Frida, Caroline, Althea, and Rachel.
Tools are made to accomplish our purposes, and in this sense, they represent desires and intentions. We make our tools, and our tools make us. By taking up particular tools, we accede to desires and we manifest intentions.
Hello everyone and welcome. The quote that you just heard is central to the idea that we'd like to talk about today. We create tools to help us accomplish tasks, but often those tools end up dictating how we go about those tasks. Today we want to explore that idea through one tool in particular, the Amazon Kindle. And after our discussion, we'd like to devote several minutes to talking about e-readers and their possibilities, so please take note of any questions or ideas that you have along the way.
As you might already know, pilot programs recently took place across the country to test how the Kindle worked for academic reading. One of them happened here at the University of Washington, in the Computer Science and Engineering Department. We had the chance to talk to some of the people involved, and we found out a lot about how the reader functioned for students.
Things got really crazy, though, when we dug a little deeper. Beyond the functionality of the Kindle as an educational tool, we realized there are a number of technological, legal, and social factors that shape not just how students use these devices, but also how they relate to the material they're accessing. Really fascinating stuff.
But before we get into all of that, it might be helpful to talk a little bit about the history of e-readers. Dedicated e-reader devices have been on the market since the early 1990s. As you can imagine, the first devices were pretty clunky, but over time, technology and functionality improved.
If they've been around for over a decade, though, why did the idea take so long to catch on? I mean, the Kindle is probably the first e-reader some of us have ever heard of.
Well, they never achieved widespread appeal for a number of reasons. First of all, why should consumers spend a lot of money on a device that has no clear advantage over its competitors? In the emerging market, a company might not be around long enough to support the device, let alone continue to sell books on it. File formats were proprietary, and there were no established industry standards. It's kind of like the Wild West of ebook publishing. Not to mention, publishers were not on board with the whole ebook thing. For them, the digital market held both promise and peril. While digitizing books could open up new markets and reach new consumers, at the time it was very difficult for publishers to protect works from being endlessly copied and widely distributed.
As the music industry found out the hard way.
Exactly. By 1999, Napster had caused near catastrophe in the music industry, and book publishers were reluctant to open themselves up to a similar disaster. The 2000s were a long uphill battle for e-reader development. It wasn't until 2007 that Amazon released the first generation Kindle. The Kindle addressed some of the concerns of both consumers and producers. Amazon, already a popular purveyor of paper books, made purchase and delivery of ebooks smooth and seamless for buyers. The proprietary file format meant that no machines could access the files, no other machines could access the files, and besides, you can't make copies on Kindles anyway.
To date, the Kindle has been the most successful e-reader ever released. It was originally designed for and marketed as a device for long-form leisure reading, but that didn't stop educators from trying to figure out ways of incorporating it into the classroom.
In May 2009, Amazon unveiled the Kindle DX. With a larger screen, auto-rotate, and native PDF support, it was marketed as the answer to educators' demands for an e-reader in the academic setting.
All right. At this point, I think it's valid to ask, what's the big deal with e-readers? I haven't bought any textbooks or printed out any articles this quarter. I just do all my reading on a computer and have software that lets me take notes, underline, highlight, albeit not always very conveniently. But why does it seem like we're talking about this like it didn't happen before the Kindle?
Well, Rachel, that's a great question. There's a big difference between e-readers and e-books, but they're often used interchangeably as if e-readers are all there are. So an e-book is a digital text, basically a collection of bits and bytes that isn't human readable. E-books can do things that paper books can't do. They can be interwoven with hyperlinks or linked to dictionaries. They can be searched for words or phrases and delivered almost instantaneously over a network connection. E-texts, or ebooks, and anything else, like articles from academic journals, newspapers, and magazines. The thing is, most e-texts aren't nearly as dynamic as what I just described, but some of them are beginning to get there.
All right. And the e-reader?
The e-reader is simply the device used to display e-texts. E-readers, as we talk about them, are distinct from things like computer desktops, laptops, or phones because they're only designed to do one thing. They're more portable than a computer, and they have a better display than a phone. In our estimation, not only the Kindle, but every other e-reader on the market currently falls short of reaching the full potential of the e-text.
Which brings us back to the pilot programs. As we mentioned, the academic community was eager to test how e-readers worked for their students. And several universities had been in contact with Amazon for quite a while, encouraging them to release an e-reader that they could use in the classroom and provide feedback on. Amazon eventually agreed, announcing the pilot program at the same time that it released the Kindle DX. The university test drive took place in the fall of 2009, and at the University of Washington, the Computer Science and Engineering Department took part in the program under the direction of Professor Ed Lazowska. They gave their incoming grad students, which was about 40 people, each a Kindle DX, and professors made their course readings available for the Kindle.
It might not be any great surprise at this point, but basically what we found out was that the Kindle is not exactly a cutting-edge academic tool. It has numerous shortcomings, both design-wise and technologically. In the first place, it's got a fairly unmanageable keyboard, kind of like a cross between a computer and a phone that leaves you feeling like you have 10 thumbs.
Rachel, show the audience what people said about the keyboard.
Well, they did call the keys both pimples and pleasure dots.
Another problem is that the Kindle only displays black and white. This is a real difficulty for students like our CSE students who need to be able to see graphs and pictures in their original format and full technical ability. Since the screen isn't backlit, it uses a special e-ink technology. The Kindle is pretty easy to read, but it's also really slow to refresh. This means navigating is hard enough that it hinders students from keeping up with class discussions because they can't easily reference pages. Just kidding, there aren't any page numbers.
And maybe I'm just being a library student here, but I thought the most surprising thing was the organization, or lack of it. The Kindle arranges the files by default according to those last accessed. You can rearrange this list, but there's no folders, no hierarchical organization at all. So basically, while the Kindle is touted as being a portable library, instead of this type of experience, nicely laid out, organized, and easily accessible, finding and accessing your desired book might feel a little bit more like this.
And also, the Kindle doesn't really play well with others. It can browse the internet over a cellular 3G network, but no pages except Amazon's display well or load quickly. And this makes it pretty useless for web surfing. It's possible that Amazon didn't even really want you to be able to do this because they have to pay for the internet access. The other thing is that though the DX has better support for PDF files than other versions of the Kindle, you can still only highlight or take notes on files that are in Amazon's own proprietary format.
So it's got a few problems. Interestingly, or maybe just because hierarchical organization isn't that sexy, there was one issue in particular that the media latched onto. The Kindle has text-to-speech capabilities. The Authors Guild, however, protested this, claiming that it violates their right to audio copyright. So Amazon compromised and agreed that publishers and authors could decide whether that function would work for their texts, and that end users would have to turn it on themselves. However, the menu to do so is not voice navigable, which means that for people such as, say, the blind, who might want to use the feature, it becomes a real hassle. The National Federation of the Blind, and the American Council of the Blind, when they got wind of this, filed a lawsuit against Arizona State University and complaints against 5 other participating schools, claiming that they had violated the Americans with Disabilities Act.
The National Federation of the Blind will not tolerate this unconscionable discrimination against and callous